This music has not been heard in a very long time. I'm talking about specifically the bars of Russolo's music.
There's that iconic photo of Russolo in the room with all his intonarumori, but it was more or less the sound. I remember hearing some very old, like, wax cylinder recordings of Russolo's compositions. One thing that always appealed to me then was this kind of the ghost in the machine. I mean, they're really the first electronic instruments. They're noisemakers, and I think the first analog synthesizers, the first modular synthesizers, really were capable of making noise. It wasn't until they slapped a keyboard on it that people started thinking about electronic instruments as musical instruments. The intonarumori really were the predecessors.
Some of these instruments were conceived using as a starting point timbres that anybody could experience walking in the city at the time in which Russolo was working, so in the turn of the century Milan. So there is a set of instruments called ululatori that are supposed to sound like sirens, and a set of instruments also called the gorgogliatori. They are supposed to sound like the water trickling down the pipe, like a gutter pipe. So the idea was that the city as an organism was waking up, and the sound that accompanied this awakening, the sound of humans going back to their usual activities during the morning, would really reawake the city. And Russolo begins using these sounds, but I think he moves quickly elsewhere, which is what he said in the Manifesto of the Art of Noises, that the sounds were just material, just matter. But then the form must be a freer form, not anchored necessarily to the sound of the city. So there is still a distance between what are the sounds and where they come from and what is the final result that Russolo wants to achieve, which is an entirely musical result. And it didn't happen just to me, to all the players involved in the town hall show. After some of the rehearsal, they were telling me, oh, now that we're just taking the subway to go from one place to one place in New York City. I mean, we feel like the instrument that we're playing here in this show are making the same sound that we're experiencing in the city. And it happened to me a few times, but sometimes I turn and I feel like, oh, that's a familiar sound that is familiar because we've been rehearsing with, and yet it's produced by something that I couldn't really tell what it is. In the Art of Noise, Russolo constantly makes the distinction between the sound that we hear and the cause that produced those sounds. He's not that interested in the causes. He's not interested in unveiling where the sound is coming from. He's interested in the sound as an abstract. So, therefore, as you walk in the city and you hear the sound, you no longer care whether it's, what is causing that? Is a car? Is that the tram? Is that, doesn't matter. The score had never been performed as it was written since Russolo's time, and chances are that in fact since the very last time that was performed was in 1914. And we rehearsed it, but it wasn't until we were on the stage that I think we really entirely felt that, I suppose, history, the weight of history on our shoulder. I mean, it was kind of a terrifying experience.
this was my first time to rehearse with the instruments just now, and the thing that I recognized the most was the use of complex timbres and microtones, because the human voice, because the voice is based on the physical device in our throats is basically like two sides of a balloon that can be stretched to make higher pitches and shortened to make lower pitches. So we have a variety of pitches that aren't used in diatonic Western music a lot of the time, and so if the thing that really sticks out to me about the intonarumori is that they work in a similar way in terms of the way they go from one pitch to another. It's always a kind of portamento, which in Western diatonic music we actually try to hide that kind of portamento that's inherent to the instrument a lot of the time.
They work tremendously like voices.
Yeah.
It's actually remarkable how similar the parameters of their expressivity mimic the same parameters that the voice has. It's just that Western music kind of encourages us to think about those scale and pitches and melodies and harmonies. So it's liberating, but I think part of the charm is that there are these relics that didn't survive, and that we reconstruct them to kind of relive art of the past. Well, the first thing that happened was I learned that the concert was to be unamplified at Town Hall. A good singer should be able to, carry his own weight in a hall, certainly one like Town Hall. That's one thing that's really exciting to me about the potential for this piece, and the fact that these intonarumori, they are their own sound system. Each one has its own speaker cone. So to amplify them again is redundant, and also to create another kind of layer of translation. So I'm really excited that that's kind of the case here with the singers here too. So I wanted to really work with that relationship, the relationship between the unamplified voice and these unamplified instruments. The way it's scored is I just basically have the instruments and the voices kind of mimicking each other, and sharing a vocabulary of pitch and timbre, and kind of how you move forward with each successive set of notes. One thing that I was kind of talking to David about before was the idea of the fact that I wanted him to kind of convey the fact that he wasn't a singer, but he was a sound, and the sound he is that of a singer.
Yeah.
So being able to play with a piece of music in that way, I find to be very specific to a context like Performa or performance art. With Performa and having an amazing opportunity like this to be able to play with these instruments at Town Hall and have a fantastic concert experience, it's like ice cream on top to be able to then open that up and be able to just have a lot more fun with it.
wanted to get the machines to imitate me, basically. So I worked with Luciano, and I said, okay, I want to start out with this kind of clicking sound, this inhaled glottal click. Oh. So which of the machines can do that? And he said, okay, this one can do it, and he would demonstrate, you know. And so we chose 4 of the instruments that could make that something that would approximate that kind of sound. He also had said to me, I don't want to amplify. So I said, well, I'm going to have to use a megaphone then. And he said, oh, well, that's great, I've got a megaphone. So,
the megaphone looked fantastic.
The megaphone, it was wonderful also because it sort of visually made me look somewhat like the intonarumori because I had this big cone coming out of my head. But also I could spatially direct the sound. I said, okay, and then I have these kind of calling, hooting sounds. Oh, oh, what kind of, you know, what of the instruments can make that? So he showed me which ones, and we chose certain ones. So this, oh, and if you get a bunch of instruments doing that and sort of dovetailing, you get this sense of you know, all this sound just endlessly rising up into the heavens. Oh. You know, that is it's a subtone, right? It doesn't really have pitch. It's actually below pitch. But theoretically, I imagined that, you know, if you have a machine that can make noise, it has to be able to make small noise. I also knew that the way the instruments work is that it's a wheel, and they're as you crank it, it's plucking a string, either a gut string or a metal string. So theoretically, it should be able to make these little tiny clicks. And I was interested in that part of it, in the quiet end of noise, as opposed to the loud end of noise. As you say, Russolo gave these families of noises. You know, the screamers and howlers and this family of animal sounds. So I thought, well, if he has a family of animal sounds, you know, some of them have to be birds. So I, you know, without having heard them, I assumed that there had to be at least one that could make that kind of a sound. So although we have come to think of these machines as making factory noises, in fact, they have pitch. You know, some of them that have like a metal bar, and so there's a kind of rod that the musician is moving so that, and you can stop it at certain places, and there are marks on this metal bar that indicate pitch. So he really intended that they have pitch as well as simply sounding like motors.